First, let's begin by sort of examining the 100 years, the last 100 years before the modern transition between the United States and China really got underway. Roughly 1860, roughly to 1970, 100 years more or less, was a fantastic period of time for the United States and for the capitalism in its particular form here. Rising GDP, rising income, rising wages, rising wealth, rising powerful country, eventually becoming global in its scope, eventually replacing the empire of which it had once been a small, inconsequential part, the British Empire. It was a really good ride up in which masses of people from very poor parts of the world, particularly in Europe, came to the United States hoping to find a way to make a better life. And they found it. It was built on the backs of the extermination of the indigenous people and the subjugation of, let's call them what they were, slaves brought from Africa, indentured workers brought from all over the world. As usual, the success had its flip side, the failures, the suffering that paid for it. But for most people who came to the United States, and certainly most white ones, it was a roaring good time. By contrast, the 100 years from, say, 1850 to 1950 were a period in which China, well, let's use their own phrase. They look back on this period as, ready, the 100 years of humiliation. That's a well-known phrase in China, for the 100 years. So the United States soaring up, the Chinese suffering levels of misery, poverty, child death, illness, you name it. If you ever want to get a feeling of an American who went there as a missionary and wrote a book, Pearl Buck, The Good Earth, will tell you more than you really want to understand. So you have enormous contrast between these two. Desperation on the one hand and euphoric economic progress and wealth on the other. And as has happened so often in history, that extreme was the hint, not that anyone got it, that the reverse might be the future. And that is what I believe is going on. Here's a little history you might want to think about to help focus you on the point we're making today. Once upon a time, the United States was a poor colony of the British Empire. Eventually, the poor country was able to get on a roll to produce things the world wanted. From the South, cotton, thanks to the slave labor of the Africans brought here. Shipping, which those in the Northeast were able to become pretty good at. They began to challenge the British Empire, which didn't let them develop their wealth, develop their economy. And eventually it led to war. The Revolutionary War, we call it in the United States, 1775-6, around then. And the British thought they could stop their colony from emerging out of poverty and backwardness and becoming its own economically growing entity. They thought they could stop it by military action, and they went to war and they lost. And the United States declared its independence from the British Empire. A few years later, in 1812, the British tried again to squash the United States militarily. and they lost again. They even debated in England in the 1860s whether to side with the South or the North in the Great Civil War of the United States. They eventually went with the North because they could see which way the economic and political wind was blowing. They began to do what I'm asking you to do, to stop thinking you could control the flow of history and figure out you better come to terms with it, or you're going to be in deep, deep trouble. And so the British became allies with the United States. They swallowed their pride. They watched as the United States grew much faster than they did, eventually surpassing Great Britain, to the point where today, if we're honest, the positions have been reversed. The powerful Britain and the lowly colony in North America is now become the powerful American empire, and it's sometimes referred to as Poodle Great Britain. But the lesson it teaches is that trying to stop this process of transition, when one empire and system is going down, the British, and another empire and system is coming up, the American, trying to stop that with warfare and aggression and in military ways, unwise, unlikely to prevail. These historic shifts are much deeper and more powerful than any military, even ones that imagine themselves to be global in what they can do.